In just 2 weeks, the region's public school fire damage bill has soared to an estimated $4 million. It will cost at least $3 million to replace a classroom block at Belmont High School. Then on Saturday evening, the figure rose by another $1 million when the library at West Cessnock Public School was destroyed.
But it is an outrage to have facilities that are needed to educate our young people being subject to that sort of attack.
There was personal disappointment for Michael Costa over the West Cessnock blaze. His partner has taught at the school and he was aware of the area's needs to assist disadvantaged pupils.
We do have some major challenges in terms of school retention rates in the area. We've got to get them up to the state average. And it doesn't help when we have critical facilities that are subject to this level of violence and this level of arson and this level of setback in terms of the educational opportunities.
Meanwhile, the Premier has signalled he'll talk with Swansea MP Milton Orkopoulos over his demand that Belmont High be brought up to 21st century standards when reconstruction begins following last month's fire.
We all want to see that. So let's see what's necessary and let's give the people the first-class school facilities they deserve.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Over the many topics on the agenda, there was one collective agreement. The current Newcastle Rugby League competition must change. On the back of Maitland dropping out pre-season and Waratah Mayfield following suit in May, along with recent blowout scorelines, the disparity between the top and bottom clubs is growing. A restructure now vital.
It was pretty clear last night that that's the only way that they thought it could survive. Clubs want to keep their own identity.
To do that, a two-tiered competition seems the most popular idea after an amalgamation with either the Central Coast Division or the Lower Hunter Rugby League, even both.
There's no doubt last night that they made a clear indication we need to go and investigate whether the Central Coast is viable and whether any other options are viable.
The league will also discuss any such moves with the Country Rugby League before moving on a proposal, but they want to implement things as early as next season. The busy week continues for the local league with South Newcastle trainer Mick Varnum fronting the judiciary tonight, while Lakes Terry Clark will front tomorrow after this effort on Jared O'Doherty. So too will Westlock Todd Madison, seen his scoring for a high tackle offence late in the game. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
The Newcastle Maritime Museum is currently in the process of moving out of Fort Scratchley with plans to move into this heritage-listed shed at Lee Wharf. But a report to Council tonight recommends that the development application not be supported because of a lack of access for vehicles. Museum President Peter Morris says there'll be ample room for buses to drop off and pick up, and cars aren't an issue.
The access to that will be essentially by public transport and by walking. I mean, people may start at the other west end or start at the east end, so they'll be utilising all of those parking facilities that are available elsewhere. But I don't see that as a problem.
Council's Development Manager Brent Knowles was too busy to speak to us today, but Council's opinion doesn't matter anyway, as the state government is the consent authority.
The consent authority is the Department of Planning and Natural Resources, but the officers writing the material and the officers responding to the material know all of that. We ordinary mortals have to get on with the job of getting the facility up and running and getting open as soon as possible.
The much-loathed square-about will go, and the area in front of the museum is to be widened under plans already approved by the state government. Paul Lobb, NBN News. "400 history buffs from the UK, Australia and New Zealand are sifting through the hot coals of the past this week. They're discussing whether historians before them got it right.
And so we're talking about the sort of disputes that historians get into amongst themselves, and there are different ways of interpreting the past.
Newcastle's early history has captured attention at the conference. Rations in the penal settlement were meat, wheat, sugar and tea. And according to Dr Nancy Cushing, it was the start of a love affair with meat.
Well, I think that we could really see, at least up until the end of the 19th century, that the heavy component of meat in the ordinary Australian's diet was related to this early establishment of a foodway that included a lot more meat than people were used to having in Britain. And in fact, that became one of the things that people were very proud of in Australia, that here in Australia you could eat meat 3 times a day.
The conference winds up on Friday.
Shut down the touch and Jeff Hugel will shut down the clock. 24.08 seconds. Good.
Champion, a resident of Brisbane, so get behind him, ladies and gentlemen. It's a short race.
Shut down the touch and Jeff Hugel will shut down the clock. 24.08 seconds. Good solid swim by the man ranked number 2 on the Australian all-time top 10.
The sky's the limit with my car. Like all my money goes into it.
Everything. I work for it. All my money from work goes straight into the car.
It's passion like this that has those in the car modification industry grinning from ear to ear. The customising scene is growing, and so is the number of people making a very healthy living from it.
Definitely the movies are helping us. Everyone wants to be fast and furious cars. They want their car, want to drive through town, get the attention like everyone in the movies do.
For those behind bodywork and engine modifications, there is no shortage of clientele. People have always been beefing up their babies, but now they're wanting to get more involved in the whole process.
100% all the way. I'll literally get them down. If I start a bar, I'll continually get them down. Every step along the way, they'll actually come down inside it.
The audio-visual aspect of modification is ever-changing, with DVD players and satellite navigation systems no longer limited to luxury cars.
The young people want it because it's the latest state-of-the-art technology, but when you get the older people, what they're trying to do, or family people, is they're trying to occupy their children for longer trips.
Those after the complete package visit the trimmers for extreme interiors and outrageous boot makeovers.
A lot of the time we try and keep a theme. If someone has an idea, we'll try and follow that theme all the way through. It just makes it look a bit more uniform.
But for people chasing that ultimate wow factor, a trip to the paint studio is a must.
We're restricted only by your checkbook and my imagination, and like you say, it's almost limitless.
In an industry that revolves around individual style and taste, it's not surprising that there have been some fussy customers and unusual requests, because after all, everybody's got a different idea of what looks and sounds good.
We had to paint a car that had sharks all over it, and the guy wanted flames as well. So the flames turned into blood. And
I did have a girl wanting, quite a while ago, she wanted, I think it was suede suits with lace sewn over the top.
People want to see everything, you know, rear monitors in boots and under bonnets, in tailgates, in boots, you know, in roofs, all sorts of weird stuff.
But with all the modification comes legal responsibility. If you change something, it has to comply. Tomorrow night we take a look at the police defecting process and why customised cars are scrutinised. There's no doubting modified cars are head-turners, but sometimes they attract the wrong kind of attention.
All right, there you go. This car, nice looking car in front of us, probably nothing wrong with it, but he wants to pull it over because it's got, look, all the cars. They've got nice paint jobs, nice mags, and they want to defect them.
Owners believe their cars act like police magnets and feel they're picked on during defect operations.
The Kingman cars that aren't even roadworthy, ball tyres, all sorts of problems, but they want to defect nice cars. The young, especially young blokes, especially on their P-plates.
Police conduct these operations once or twice a month. They patrol areas where modified cars are known to congregate and pull over those they suspect are breaching regulations by driving a customised vehicle without the required engineer's certificate.
It's probably more cars and more traffic and more chance of stopping or finding that the vehicles that we need to sort of have scrutinised.
The cars are then brought here to the RTA inspection station where they're put over the pits and thoroughly examined.
I got a very distressed phone call from my son saying, Dad, they want to take me down the RTA and put me over the pits, and the word "the pits" says it all, you know you're going to get nailed left, right and centre.
Some say targeting modified cars is blatant revenue raising. Police say it's about taking the unroadworthy vehicles off our streets.
They can get underneath it and they can find serious problems with rust or brakes or suspension. A lot of times people do backyard jobs to lower vehicles and it's quite dangerous.
You've got to give them credit where they spend the money on the tyres and the music, but they neglect to look at the more nuts and bolts of the vehicle.
What's wrong with your car?
Everything. They think everything's wrong. Use unsafe, unserviced vehicle on road area.
It's going to defect me because it's too low.
Is it too low?
Yeah, just a bit. The laws are there for a reason, and if we break them, then it's our own fault.
And while a defect notice is enough to sour anyone's day, there are plenty of good things that come out of owning a customised car, like the friendships that are forged. Tomorrow night we take a look at the social culture that has evolved around car modifications.
The 2004 Origin Series belongs to the Blues, and I thought there were some unforgettable performances. None pleased me more than the efforts of Nathan Highmarsh and Craig Fitzgibbon. Now these two guys combined in the back row to achieve some amazing workloads that very quickly secured the upper hand for the Blues. They were honestly dynamic. Trent Barrett, now he had a game plan before the start of the match that was to attack the Queensland defence line, and that's exactly what he did. Now himself and Freddie Fittler took on the line early in the first half, cut them to pieces, and I've got to say it was one of the most dominant displays I've seen in the halves since King Wally and Alfie. Now the highlight for me was watching Danny Medeiros, now holding the Origin shield over his head. He's a real polished performer these days, and not long taking the captaincy over from the Newcastle Knights, now the captain of a series-winning Origin team. His career continues to excel at a very fast rate, and I still think the best is yet to come for Danny. Well, with Origin out of the road now, some great clashes coming up the weekend, but tonight's one is a little beauty between the Dragons and the Broncos at WIN Stadium. There'll be up to a dozen players backing up in this one. Now, the Dragons have been in dynamic form in the last couple of weeks, and their statistics are quite phenomenal as well. They're right up there with the Roosters as far as performance is concerned. I think the Broncos, led by Gordon Tallis, will make up a bit from their disappointment on Wednesday night. It'll be a fiery affair, but I'm going to tip the Broncos to win tonight. In other games in round 18, Saturday's 3 games, I like the Raiders over the Cowboys, Sharks to take the Warriors on at home and win, and the Roosters to keep on their roll. Sunday, a tough one to pick, but I'm going to go with the Eagles, the Storm and the Panthers to win their games. Good luck for your tips. See you all next week.
For Ben Steele, a fight against kickboxing world number 2 Prince Hamid was reason to get pumped up. But a freakish accident after training on Wednesday night has robbed him of a start in the high-profile fight.
Having a hot shower out of the shower, moving around a bit in the bathroom, bit of shadow boxing in front of the mirror, and the shadow come out and took me down, and unfortunately I've come down on my head.
Steele's spot was then offered to another local fighter, Jared Botha. Described as the next big thing in Australian kickboxing, the current New South Wales light heavyweight champ believes he's up to the task.
Obviously, I've got to step up. I'm fighting a world-class fighter in Prince Hamid, but I'm ready for the challenge. I hope Newcastle's going to come in and support me and get behind me.
However, his Moroccan opponent seems unfazed by the switch and says he won't be changing tactics.
I'm here to do whatever. I just jump in the ring and do my own things. That's about it.
The 8-fight card is on tomorrow night at Panthers Newcastle. In Newcastle Rugby League, Torres will be hoping home ground advantage will be enough to get them home against joint ladder leaders Western Suburbs tomorrow at Lakeside. Lakes United has the bye, but Terry Clark will be out for longer than that, suspended for 4 weeks overnight by the judiciary after this tackle on Jared O'Doherty last weekend. In Newcastle and Hunter Rugby, Uni will have its premiership credentials tested against an Eastern District side which is reeling from its own suspension dramas. While Broadmeadow will be hoping it can stop a high-flying Edgeworth on Sunday in the NBN Soccer League.
After 12 years with 5 different clubs, Cessnock 5/8 Steve Storey ran out today for his 250th top-grade match in the Newcastle Rugby League. But it was his partner in the halves, Kane Bradley, who starred early, starting things out wide for Clint Talon to finish off and grab first points. The former country half barged over himself soon after, while Troy Peterson and Storey played a numbers game to leave David Green up unchallenged for a clear run to the line. Cessnock actually had 22 points before Curry had any, but Daniel Allgood's effort was almost worth the wait, with a determined run to the line. There's always feeling in a coalfields derby, but too many points for Curry's liking. Cessnock comfortable winners.
A small government notice is causing a stir in New South Wales timber towns. It outlines the Carr government's proposal for new forestry regulations. The state government says the move would facilitate the orderly and responsible cutting and removal of timber from the Crown timber lands through a licensing system. Shadow Minister for State Development George Souris believes it is a way to privatise the timber industry.
To sneak through a regulation, the government knows full well if it did the proper process, go to Parliament, face the elected representatives, the Act wouldn't get through.
Mr Souris says if it gets through, the regulation would allow timber cutting and harvesting on Crown land to be licensed.
Now this way, they're able to privatise them through a licensing arrangement, but in the end it means fewer jobs for local communities, lower environmental standards and bad bushfire management.
Minister for the Hunter, Michael Costa, was assisting the Natural Resources Minister, Craig Knowles, with the forestry portfolio as recently as 2 weeks ago, but has since, without official announcement, stepped aside from the role. Mr Costa wasn't available to comment on the forestry regulation today. However, his office did say the government has not yet made a decision. Members of the public have 2 weeks to make submissions on the proposal. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
It's been a long road back for Steve Simpson, almost 15 weeks, and the test forward is convinced he's ready to return. Now he only has to do likewise with the coach.
I think I've done enough, and I'm not sure how fit I'll be, mate, out there, but the body's feeling pretty well.
He still has to get through a series of sessions this week before getting a full clearance to return, and what a team to face first up in the red-hot Broncos.
You've got to come back sooner or later. Like, there's no easy sides out there, so why not test yourself against one of the better sides?
George Carmont has proven he's up to top-grade football in his debut season, and now Tamana Tahu is set to leave, the Kiwi has become a priority buy for the club. As for Tahu, his ankle injury isn't recovering as fast as he first hoped, and he'll have further scans tomorrow. Some good news for Andrew Johns today, given the all-clear to start running after his knee reconstruction, but he can't help them on Sunday.
Well, we've got to start winning games now, I think, and sort of get a little bit of a momentum to make the semi-finals.
The team to play the Broncos will be released tomorrow.
The concerned residents of Black Ned's Bay Group was determined to make the state government see the forest for the trees today, swamping the Fisheries Minister Ian MacDonald with a campaign to have mangroves eradicated from the area's waterways. The group says mangroves have contributed to the degradation of the salt marsh ecosystem during the last 50 years, and mangrove removal is long overdue.
And return the area to what it was once before, salt marsh, and encourage back the bird life that fed from that.
The minister fell short of making any promises, but the days for Black Ned's Bay mangroves could be numbered.
Well, I believe that if that's the appropriate course of action following some assessment and study, certainly action could be taken.
I don't envisage that 50 years ago what was once pristine can be got back, but we can certainly win a lot of it back.
The Fisheries Minister was also at Lake Macquarie today to assess fish stock levels. A survey conducted over the last 3 months shows recreational anglers have recorded a 35% increase in catch numbers since commercial fishing was banned in the lake 2 years ago. Todd Nardi, NBN News. The underwater world of the Swansea Bridge is regarded as one of the most spectacular diving spots in New South Wales. While the submarine perspective may look calm enough, it is troubled waters. The RTA says erosion and softer sand levels have been detected below the bridge on the western side, the result of which is clearly illustrated above the surface by the bridge railing. It's estimated a section of the northbound bridge has sunk nearly 20 centimetres. The left lane has been closed to traffic to allow essential repairs to take place. Work is being completed from a barge to reinforce the structure.
They're stabilising it and stabilising it not only with one pier but a number of piers to ensure that it's rock solid and doesn't move again.
It's expected the repair works will stop the bridge from sinking in the short term, while a new bridge has been suggested as the long-term solution.
To find something like $40 to $50 million to replace a bridge is a lot of money, and I believe what we're doing now is stabilising it for at least the next 10 years.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.
A blinding start by Norths got them the lead after 13 minutes with a driving strike tapped in by Paul Kirkwood for the opening goal. The Tigers' fight was courageous, with gutsy goal line defence a highlight, denying several chances from Norths with some spectacular saves. But they couldn't keep them out forever, and a clever 1-2 punch hit home the second goal, with Andrew Willett scoring as Norths went on to win. And Warners Bay kickboxer Jared Botha's win on Saturday night has been met with plenty of interest, with offers for more pro fights. Botha scored a stunning win against world number 2 Prince Hamid from Morocco, but given he enjoyed a huge height and reach advantage, his trainer isn't rushing the 20-year-old. His win did come at some cost. His car was stolen during the bout. It makes you wonder what would happen to the thief had Botha caught them.
With Knights star Ben Kennedy off to Manly next season and Matt Parsons no longer wanted by the club, Newcastle will need some hard hitters. Brisbane's Carl Webb, seen here slamming Paul Rahihi into the park in 2000, could be the Knights' next hard man. The Knights confirmed today they have made Webb an offer and are awaiting a reply. The Broncos travel to Newcastle to take on the Knights this Sunday. The game will give Newcastle coach Michael Hagan a chance to speak to Webb and see him play. Unwanted by the Broncos for next season, the 23-year-old is believed to be on the verge of signing with either Newcastle or North Queensland. Meantime, Newcastle teams are racking up the wins at the University Games in Wollongong this week. Into tomorrow's semi-finals are the mixed and women's netball sides, the softball team, the men's and women's touch teams, tennis and water polo. The women's rugby side is also into the finals.
Have you ever wondered why modified cars tend to cruise around in groups, gathering in certain areas, sometimes bringing traffic to a standstill? Whether it's in the sporting arena or at a patchwork quilt class, friendships are forged when people have things in common. So it's not surprising that customised car owners are mates with other customised car owners.
people that are enthusiastic about cars come up and approach you and say, oh, well, you know, is that the new VYSS Commodore? And you go, yeah. And then they want to have a look over it, and the next thing you know, you're talking, and as a result, you meet friends.
And friends do things together. These friends go cruising in their cars.
And then we all sort of get together and meet at a servo, and then we leave from there and drive together. Two-way radios are a great thing in cars.
Country barbecues are very popular. You know, drive up the coast to go to the beach, or down the coast to go to the beach, or if there's a car show going somewhere, they'll drive off to a car show.
And before you complain about multicoloured congestion on our roads, consider what the procession line of fiberglass and rumbling mufflers could be all about.
We did a toy run for the Samaritans childcare centres at the end of the year. We pushed a pie van in from Hexham all the way into town to raise XYZ amount of dollar, $5,000 odd for telethon.
We do charity runs with it, and we also go to different places like palliative care and so forth, and give the kids a chance to have a look at the car.
We're not just hoons. We're out there trying to do things, and we're trying to add a positive contribution to community.
The internet has revolutionised the way people with common interests can communicate. There are hundreds of Australian web-based forums dedicated to car enthusiasts, providing a platform to discuss all facets of car modification.
Especially now with digital photography, etc., they've all got their little web spaces somewhere and their cars are on it, and they talk about their cars.
And while technology has allowed car modification to progress to a whole new level, there is one group of enthusiasts still doing things the traditional way. In the final instalment of our series tomorrow night, we take a step back in time, talking to the hot rodders who started the whole business.
Trams were once the lifeblood of public transport in Newcastle. From the late 1880s, an extensive network linked the city with the beaches and suburbs. But a preference for buses eventually saw the tramways go broke, and this was the last one in town. It's been rescued from a paddock at Cessnock and was today trucked to its new home at the Regional Museum.
We're going to restore it up, but certainly not to operational level, so we can bring school kids in and visitors can come in and have a sit on the tram and a bit of a remember.
It's one of only 3 known remaining Newcastle trams, giving us an important link with the past.
The trams have been gone for more than 50 years now, but there's still plenty of people about who wish they were still running through the streets of Newcastle.
Well, I think it's easier transport instead of all these damn cars in the streets.
Well, there'd be less pollution, wouldn't there?
Well, it'd get rid of a lot of the cars off the road. You know, they could certainly move the people.
I think there's opportunity to see trams running on a tourist basis in the city and along the harbour foreshore.
The museum is looking for skilled volunteers to be involved in the tram's restoration. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
A simple rest break ended in death for 45-year-old Stephen Rose on this lonely stretch of the Newell Highway south of Dubbo. Victorian Philip John Pettigrew flagged down a truck driver around 8 p.m. last night, claiming he had hit a pedestrian. The police were called and Pettigrew was taken to Dubbo Police Station, where he was later charged with murder.
It appears that he has been savagely assaulted, and beyond that I can't comment until the results of the post-mortem are known.
Today, Dubbo Court heard Pettigrew told police he had tried to break Rose's neck, but when that failed, he punched him repeatedly in the head. It's alleged he then rammed his head into the side of the car, the fact sheet also stating Pettigrew forced a plastic bag into Rose's mouth while he lay prone beside the vehicle. Earlier yesterday, Pettigrew was released from a secure psychiatric facility at Torres Manning Base Hospital. After being diagnosed with chronic schizophrenia, he was on his way back to Victoria when the incident took place. While Mid-North Coast Area Health refused to comment on the matter, it's expected questions will be raised about how the state system deals with mental health patients. Pettigrew's solicitor did not apply for bail today but requested his client face a psychiatric assessment before the matter is next heard. The magistrate agreed to the assessment and set the next hearing down for September 22. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Well, the footy show hit the snowfields again. We did the show live last night from Perisher Blue and it was a great success. Conditions all week down here have been perfect. When we talk about great successes, the return of Craig Gower last week to the Penrith outfit was quite amazing. Now, they had a 42-8 victory over the Raiders. Now, prior to that, they'd lost 4 of their last 6 matches and we're beginning to look a little bit like outside chances of retaining their premiership titles from last year. But with Gower back, they look like a completely different team. The number 7 was everywhere. He had a hand in most of their tries. 6 out of the 8 tries he was there. His kicking game was spot on, with Amos Roberts picking up a double. He took on the line at will and also took a lot of pressure off Preston Campbell. Now, he played a much more natural game with Gower back. The Panthers are currently sitting on 4th position. They've got the bye this week before starting their home run for the semi-finals. They take the Bulldogs on next week on a Friday night game, which will be a blockbuster. Look for the Panthers to be big improvers for the rest of this year. Well, let's get on to round 20, and tonight the Tigers take on the Bulldogs. The Tigers, they're fresh from a victory last week against the Storm, but I think they'll find it tough against the Bulldogs. Doggies to win that one. Now, on Saturday, I like the Broncos, Storm, and the Roosters to win their games, and Sunday, look, Knights to win against the Cowboys at home. It is a big game for the Newcastle Knights. Dragons to beat the Sharks in the local derby, and the Raiders to win their games. Well, that's it from Perisher Blue. Good luck with your tips. We'll catch you next week.
Our hospitals are busier than ever. Nearly 109,000 people were admitted to public hospitals across the region in the last 12 months, up by 3,215 patients, or 3.2%. An ageing population isn't the only reason for the rise.
Also, we're having more people actually present at emergency. As it's harder and harder to get a GP, people are now presenting directly to emergency. That has caused us a lot of problems over the last 12 months, but the staff have really rallied to it.
Although admissions are up, surprisingly, Hunter Health says a survey showed 91% of patients at emergency departments rated them as excellent, very good or good. Access block, which is the number of people who spend 8 hours or more in emergency waiting for admission to hospital, has dropped from 37 to 29%.
It's still too high, and we are going to do our best to fix it over the next 12 months.
The 2003-2004 report could be the last individual snapshot from Hunter Health, with the strongest indication yet that the Hunter and New England Area Health Services will merge.
Because there is going to be a redistribution in relationship to boundaries. But what that'll mean is we're putting more money back into frontline clinical care. If there's less money spent on administration, there's more money for all the services that we truly need.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.
As Administrator Terry Clout will lead the Hunter into a new era, taking on the arduous task of shaping the newly amalgamated Area Health Service of 800,000 people, bounded by Tenterfield, Wee-Waa and Taree, and amongst his many jobs, selecting the administration positions to be axed.
Would it be silly for us to come in on day two and say these are the positions? The most sensible thing to do is to work through with the staff and look at those jobs that we can do better in the administrative areas.
And while the Health Minister says $100 million will be saved each year from the job losses, questions are being raised about where the money will be spent.
We can't trust Sydney, we can't trust a single monolithic bureaucracy to spend that money from whence it came on frontline medical services.
The savings that are made in administrative areas will be retained by each area health service.
One of the major concerns about the merger is the provision of mental health services, an area already stretched to the limit. Last week, a chronic schizophrenic was released from Atari Hospital and later allegedly bashed a friend to death. There's concern from opponents that the amalgamation will mean Hunter mental health services will be spread even more thinly.
Hunter is not resource rich in mental health services and infrastructure, but in relative terms to New England, it is. Hunter does have critical mass and capacity to assist New England, principally Tamworth, fill a critical workforce shortage.
Arriving from the US just a week ago, Kavosi Franklin is feeling right at home, and that's good news for the Pirates.
Oh, I'm adjusting real well. I mean, I'm here. It's time to go to work.
And that they did. Commencing their conditioning work well before other clubs, the Pirates hope the early start will give them what's needed to run rings around their rivals. The conditioning much more beneficial for the imports adjusting to a Hunter Valley winter.
It's really cold, and it's always hard to run when it's really cold and held in the cold air. But we're adjusting to that very well.
In the NBN Soccer League, a second-half double by Peter Beckler saved Olympic, forcing a 2-2 draw in last night's catch-up game. Liam Maguire gave the visitors a 1-0 lead going into the break. Broadmeadow remains in third place, followed by Hamilton 4 points behind. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Since the 1960s, Tocal CB Alexander College has nurtured the land's best and brightest on what is still one of the area's biggest commercial farms. As well as their agricultural studies, the students help run commercially viable dairy and beef herds and grow chickens, as well as carrying out research and land care projects. A 6-month state government review may change all that. Today at least, the college was embarking on a new venture known as Hunter Harvest, promoting a collective of local farmgate produce.
Particularly for locals to have local food, but also for tourists to have local food when they come here.
Businesses including the Wallarobba Rabbit Farm and the nearby Lavender Farm have already signed up. It's hoped the Hunter Harvest campaign will entice people to the agricultural pockets of the region for a diversity of farm tours and access to fresh produce.
I think once they know what is available that they will come, because I think our products are great. People want these beautiful fresh products now.
The aim is for Hunter Harvest to help make the region a destination for an all-round taste trip.
I think we have a wonderful wine industry and we want to build up the food side of it so that we've got that complementary effect between wine and food.
Todd Nardi, NBN News. Sitting fifth in the Australian Motocross Series, Denny Ham knows he's out of the running for the overall crown. However, the Hunter rider can still make things tough for others and has home track knowledge to boot. Finishing touches were made to the series of jumps and banks at Barley Ranch track near Raymond Terrace today, modifications Ham designed himself.
The track's excellent. We've put a lot of effort into this track and we should end up with a great race meeting.
The man they all have to catch is Kiwi Daryl King, who's won the past 5 events. While that makes scoring a homegrown winner only a possibility, aerial acrobatics will be unavoidable on the giant Barley Ranch jumps.
One of them's 24 metres point to point. That's a pretty big jump on an outdoor motocross.
Racing from 11 a.m. Sunday. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Since the advent of mega shopping centres, the Hunter Street Mall has struggled to attract shoppers, but Friday night trading could bring them back, activating the city on a night when there's no other shopping options. Retailers say it's futile trying to compete with the larger shopping centres on a Thursday night.
I know Brisbane and Canberra do it extremely successful. Rather than compete directly with the shopping centres, bring the people back into the city on a Friday night.
Councillor Aaron Buman, who will meet retailers next week, says Friday night shopping could attract tourists and also discourage antisocial behaviour.
I've seen tourists arrive in the town for their Friday night to stay for their weekend. They've got their cheap airfare and they arrive, and it's a bit of a ghost town.
And coupled with the markets in the mall due to start later this year, Lord Mayor John Tate is supportive of the idea.
The opportunity to trade on a Friday night will be very good, used in conjunction with the markets, which will be open in the next month or thereabouts. To be able to enliven the city with this type of retail activity, I think makes a lot of sense.
But some retailers are not yet convinced.
We don't have the vastness of the larger retailers in the mall to actually attract people to come here. If we could attract more large retail chains, then I think it would be a great possibility.
If golf is about picking times to attack and play it safe, then the latter was certainly the method of choice today. Putting that into practice, though, was a whole different matter on a day the cup seemed to be the size of a pin. Scores weren't the only thing blowing out, as the winds got stuck into everything. A final year trainee, Mark Gilson's short game lived up to its reputation as he battled to overcome a tough start. Dropping 3 on the outgoing 2 holes, he managed to cart a 5 over par 78. It was a familiar story for fellow local Hope Kurt Lind. The big Belmont-based golfer, though, will have to work hard after a first round 80. Not as hard as some, who literally watched their chances sail away. Maitland Golf Club's Vicky Tutt, though, has given herself a chance with a solid start given the conditions. 3 over after the outwood 9, she picked up a stroke on the way back to the clubhouse to sit 2 shots behind the leaders. Troubled by an ankle problem since playing Manly in late June, it caught up with Matt Parsons last weekend. But desperate to return, Parsons convinced the coach he's ready and will simply manage the injury the best he can for the rest of the season.
Probably structurally it can't be a lot better than it is. It's just soreness really more than anything else. So I've just got to bite me lip and get into it.
He'll start off the bench in a game they all know means so much to their season.
You can't understate it, but by repeating it all the time doesn't make blokes play any better.
And that attitude is reflected in the relaxed build-up, which is hoped to provide the perfect preparation, and the coach knows better than most what to expect. After playing more than 100 games with the Red and Blue, tomorrow will mark his century as coach.
It's come around pretty quickly actually. The last 4 years, I probably look at about 10 years older than when I started.
A win against the Raiders would be the best way to celebrate. Jim Callanan, NBN News. After toughing it out for the first 3 rounds in sometimes brutish conditions, Horizons seemed to want revenge on Vicky Tutt today. The best of the 9 females who lined up in the tournament, she began the day only 4 shots off the lead, but couldn't recover from a poor outward 9, eventually carding an 82, but still good enough to finish 5th. Bryce McDonald was going to need a fantastic round to reel in the leader, and picking up a stroke wasn't a bad start, before things took a turn. He was in good company. Sean Piper found some traps near impossible to escape. Mark Gilson had one of the more consistent rounds of the day. Even when in trouble, he found a way out to card a 1 over 73 and finish 3rd. It was really a race between 2, with David Williams and defending champion Martin Joyce. The latter able to hold off the challenge over the closing holes to finish 3 shots the better. The fact no one finished under par though for the tournament, testament to the tough conditions and leaving the course as the real winner this week. Still in business after a win against the Raiders, the Knights were back at work today, now clinging to the top 8 on percentages. And as far as numbers go, Steve Witt seems to have found the one that suits him. After debuting for Newcastle at 5/8, he spent another stint in the lower grades before earning a recall as halfback.
It sort of helped me being at 7, not 6, because at 6 I just sort of don't get involved enough.
Now with instructions to do just that, he's revelling with a clever kicking game and support play that's earned him 2 tries in 2 weeks.
Yeah, so about time, it took me about 11 games.
As for the match-winning try, Michael Ennis's drop-kick grubber was still a talking point today. A victim of video refereeing decisions in recent weekends, he was happy to see one go his way for a change.
Oh, mate, it's been my case the last couple of weeks. Video ref, I'm giving him some trouble.
Mark Hughes seems to be over his. The centre cleared for a return after tearing his esophagus. Daniel Abraham too is expected to start back via the bench against the Sea Eagles after an ankle injury that's kept him sidelined since the City Country match back in early May. The full team will be announced tomorrow to play a Sea Eagles side coming off its worst ever defeat. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Gretley was one of Newcastle's first and last coal mines. Rather than longevity, its place in history is for a disaster that killed 4 mine workers. Edward Batterham, John Hunter, Mark Kaiser and Damon Murray drowned after old mine workings were breached, flooding Gretley almost 8 years ago. Justice Patricia Staunton today found that mine operator Newcastle Wallsend Coal Company and owner Oakbridge failed to ensure the health, safety and welfare of their employees. Mine managers Richard Porteous and Jonathan Romke, along with mine surveyor Mark Robinson, also committed offences under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Summonses against another 5 Gretley employees were dismissed. Father of 19-year-old Damon Murray, mining union official Ian Murray, says the verdict is some justice for the victims and their families.
You couldn't wish upon anybody, as it's been 7 years, 8 months and 21 days since I've lost my boy, and nobody should have to go through that sort of trauma or tragedy.
Xstrata Coal, which purchased part of Oakbridge after the disaster, hopes the conclusion of the matter is a relief to all involved and extended deeper sympathies to the victims' families. But with Justice Staunton yet to decide on penalties and costs, the families believe Xstrata's current involvement should be taken into account.
Her Honour, when she considers the penalty, she should be mindful that it's a multinational South African company, Xstrata, that's behind all this. They've bankrolled the defence millions and millions of dollars.
The Mine Workers Union says the finding is an overdue warning to coal companies and mine managers that they are accountable for the health and safety of their employees. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Last year's grand finalists, Cessnock and Raymond Terrace, found themselves locked in a battle just to make the semi-finals, and neither was backing down from the fight. The premiers with the best early chance, doing everything but scoring. Jamie Batty is always a handful, but when he came under extra attention from Cessnock's defence, it gave Les Smith a chance to boot first points. Steve Storey replied in kind, before saving a certain 4-pointer, the 5/8 winding back the clock to deny the Terrace as they went to the break 2-2. It was going to take something special to break the deadlock, and not long after, they trapped the Terrace in goal. The Goannas got over the line themselves after a well-rehearsed move that fooled everyone, and a punishing run from Mick Campton, who crossed in his first game back from suspension. Storey adding the extras before a penalty goal got them further ahead, but you couldn't question the commitment from the Terrace. But discipline did cost them in the end as Cessnock got home 22-2. They now back up to play their third sudden death game in 7 days against Wyong this weekend.